What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel for episode 6 of my Bootcamp journal. Once again, thank you guys for following along. If you haven't been, don't forget to go back and watch the previous videos as they all lead up to the finale of Bootcamp. If you're thinking about going into boot camp, or you know anybody that's going into boot camp, these videos can help you out significantly. They can help you prepare, just kind of learn what boot camp's all about, how to avoid certain things in boot camp, and your do's and don'ts. Day 32. Today has been a great day so far. Quick recap first, I did not get fired from section leader. I did lose my pin, however, but the position remains mine, at least for now. I guess Chief wasn't too happy with the LCPO's decision to fire me. When I was in the laundry room the other day, they were forming up for March, and he noticed I was gone. So the other section leaders told him what happened, and Chief said, "No, fuck that, give him his shit back." I guess they were adamant on me remaining section leader, which I'm cool with. So, when I did get fired, my chief wasn't there. He didn't see it happen, but my other RDCs saw it happen, so apparently they didn't tell him or anything. And so when they were forming up to March, and when I was supposed to be in the front of the formation for section leader, they noticed I wasn't there, and Chief was pretty irritated when he found out that Senior Chief fired me over some dumb shit. But I was still section leader, I still got all the perks for it, so everything kind of worked out. But anyways, today has been super eventful. We had our Marlin spike test, which is all line handling stuff. We got to do an actual simulation on a section of an actual ship. It was nerve-wracking as hell, but we came together and passed the second time around. The first time went pretty horribly. If you do anything wrong, it's considered a hit against you. All hits equal deaths on the deck, and slightest mistakes could kill someone, so they take it pretty seriously. Our division as a whole took 14 hits on the first run, equaling 14 deaths. In order to pass, you need 0 deaths, which we did manage to pull off the second time around. After the first fail, the instructors called our RPOC to the front and center and told him to pick 14 people of whom he would let die. If the RPOC actually chose someone, those people got asmoed. He didn't, of course. He refused like any decent person would. But then they asked him to make a motivational speech and make them believe we deserved a second chance, which he failed at miserably. So they called on someone else to take the stage and convince them to give us another chance. That's when the most unlikely of candidates came forward to save the day. The one fucking guy that was my battle buddy when I had to go to medical. But his speech worked, and we were allowed to give it another shot. Our RPOC did the right thing in not choosing anybody that he would let die during the evolution, but when they asked him to make a motivational speech, it was horrid. I mean, it was terrible. He had nothing. But the one kid in our division who nobody could stand, there is one thing I'll say about him. He is the most motivated dude I've ever met in my Navy career. No matter how bad he is at stuff, he's absolutely motivated to get in there and get things done. He really helps the team, bring up everybody's spirits. He was a good kid. He stepped forward and, gave a really motivational speech and convinced the instructors, the Marlin Spike instructors, to give us another shot. So it kind of all worked out at the end. So for the Marlin Spike test, they give you a very strict set of rules. They'll tell you exactly what you can and can't do. Like, I think one of the only ones that I really remember is you're not allowed to put your knee on the deck at any time because you're doing it's basically practice for mooring the ship to the pier. And so you have to do everything in a very specific way, because if it goes wrong in any way, it can kill somebody very quickly. The lines can snap, and so you can't stand on a certain side of the line because the line can snap and cut you in half. I mean, it's crazy. So if your knee touched the deck, that was an automatic death. They'd ring the bell, and it was nerve-wracking to, be thrown into this evolution that, yeah, you practice for it, but you're never in the situation. And so when you hear that bell ring, it's like, oh shit, you kind of get startled a little bit, and you get a little more nervous every time you hear the bell ring because you're trying to pass. And so it gets messy. Although I was worried about the Marlin Spike test, I was much more worried about the 12-minute sustained run afterwards. They split us up into 3 groups. Group 1, people who completed the run in 12 minutes or less on the first PFA. Group 2, 12 minutes to 14 minutes. And Group 3, 14 minutes and up. I was in Group 3. We ran at a relatively slow pace, but I was able to run the full 12 minutes without stopping. I surprised myself. Now I just have to do that, but a little faster, and I'll be golden. Luckily, I popped a couple ibuprofen beforehand, which I think helped me a lot with my knee. It started to hurt around the 8-minute mark, but I just changed up my run a little, and I was able to suppress it. That's really all I have time to write about today. Hell Week is approaching, and we will be revving at 0400 soon. I need to prepare for that. Good night, my wife. So, as I said before, running in boot camp was always the biggest concern of mine because I had issues with my knee at the beginning for a long time. So when I saw that there's like a 5-minute sustained run, then a 8-minute, then a 12-minute, and then a 20-minute sustained run throughout boot camp, I was super worried that I wasn't going to be able to do it because your RDC, or at least my RDCs, threatened us that if we weren't able to do it, if we stopped, we would get asthma. So that was always a big concern. Day 33, commence Hell Week, ... And as you can see, I completely X'd that out because Hell Week, so let's talk about Hell Week for a minute. Hell Week is basically a week where you do all of the evolutions that you learn throughout boot camp in 1 week. So you do your firefighting stuff, you do your marlin spike stuff, you do drill inspections, you do a bunch of different inspections every day. But it's the busiest week because you have to rev at 0400 every day. You gotta get up early as hell. You're up pretty late, and then you just have to, you're constantly busy. You're always moving. And so it gets kind of hectic a little bit. 3/7/18. Hell Week is officially over. Well, yesterday was the end of it, technically. There's a reason they call it that, too. The biggest reason is the rev time is 0400. 0400 is way too early to be waking my happy ass up to march across campus. And of course, our RPOC is a mega douchebag and wants everyone up an hour earlier than actual rev time. So we did. One by one, getting out of bed to get into the bathroom to shave. Most of us got back in bed afterwards for a bit because sleep was going to be essential for all the 4-hour classes we had coming up. Once we all finally crawled out of bed, we got into a height line so we could form up on the grinder outside and get on our way. So at the time, I thought our RPOC was kind of a douchebag just because, he wanted us to get up an hour earlier. But in hindsight, when you look back at it, that was a very smart thing to do. And it's a smart thing to do all throughout boot camp, to be honest. If you can get up an hour earlier than you're actually supposed to, and you are ready when your RDCs come in, they will be extremely impressed by that. And they'll lighten up on you a lot because they won't have to come in and they won't have to push that strict schedule, get ready, get ready, get ready. You'll already be ready and they'll be like, oh, okay, these guys know what they're doing. So I highly recommend if you're going into boot camp, wake up an hour earlier, have your whole division wake up an hour earlier. It will save you guys a ton. Day 1 of Hell Week, live fire classes. We were finally about to start our live fire training. It sounded like it was going to be a fun experience, but live fire is conspired of one of the most important lessons in both boot camp and the Navy in general, and the instructors treated it as such. They were dicks, almost all of them. The first day was practice shooting with lasers, which I owned like a boss. It was very simple, but the recoil in the air-compressed laser pistols was only 1/3 of the recoil of the actual M9 pistol, so I wasn't in the clear yet. Day 2 of Hell Week, we revved at 0400, marched our happy asses back to the range to do our live fire test and our weapons turnover inspection. The instructors were dicks again, of course, as expected. I did a lot better than I thought I would on live fire. I was nervous as hell considering I had never fired a gun before. I'm not sure what my score was quite yet, but I feel like I at least got a sharpshooter. We will see. The weapons turnover inspection did not go well at all. They had us line up in a single file row in front of the clearing barrels, and as another group was doing their inspection, they'd ask the spectating group a random question regarding weapons turnover. My question is, what is a hang fire? I felt so dumb because I had never even heard the term before, so I told him that, and he asked me what a misfire was instead, and I once again felt retarded when I got the question wrong, even though I knew the answer. So, the weapons turnover inspection was the only inspection throughout boot camp that I did not get a perfect 5.0 score on. I got 2 hits. I'll explain the other one. The first one was a question hit. They asked me what a hang fire was, and that wasn't the term that we used in boot camp, and so I had no idea what he was talking about. And so when he asked me that, and I told him I'd never heard that term before, he asked the entire room what a hang fire was, and if we had ever heard that term before, and only half the room raised their hand. So I don't know what happened there, if they were supposed to teach us that, or if maybe I was just supposed to know that a hang fire and a misfire were the same thing. But I knew what a misfire was, and I can't believe I got the question wrong. I was like, I just completely drew a blank when he asked me that question, and so I felt extremely retarded when I got that one wrong. We were allowed only 2 hits, and 3 hits was a fail. It was then my group's turn to come up to the clearing barrels for the inspection, at which point I took another hit for loading the bullet backwards in the magazine. How was I supposed to know? I've never loaded a gun before. Luckily, I didn't take any more hits and passed the inspection. Chief was furious with us when he returned to the compartment. Apparently a lot of us took hits and lowered the divisional score for the WTI, so much that we had the worst in our training group. Ouch. That was a stupid hit too. I mean, but fuck, I didn't know. I'd never loaded a gun before. Day 3 of Hell Week. Next up was firefighting class, and our second PFA, the RDC assessment. It being Hell Week and all, we kind of expected the early rev time at this point. We got up and got ready for a long trek all the way to the other side of base. These instructors were a bit more on the pleasant side at times. They let us freely ask questions about our rates as well as theirs. The class itself was a bit boring though. The amount of people that I had to tell to stand up was a bit ridiculous. But it's a good thing we policed each other instead of the instructors doing it for us. We learned the differences of fire extinguishers, fires, eductors, etc. I'm kind of stoked about all the stuff I know now, to be honest. We didn't get to do any hands-on stuff on day 3, but that was going to come soon. So, the firefighting class was probably my favorite class in the entire boot camp because the instructors were really cool. You know, they let you talk about anything that you wanted. You got to sit there and ask questions because there's a lot of downtime in the firefighting class. You know, you got to ask, what's it like being in this rate? What's it like being in that rate? And they would tell you straight up, this rate has this kind of advancement, this rate has that kind of advancement, this is what you do in the air department, this is what you do in the weapons department. It was really nice to be able to have that relaxed time. But once again, the hardest part about the firefighting class was how many people would sit there and fall asleep. They would doze off. And so you'd have to, like, you know, hey, get up, stand up. And if they didn't stand up, then, you know, the instructors would yell at them, or they'd make everybody stand up, and it was just kind of a pain in the ass. After we finished the class, we marched back to Freedom Hall for our RDC assessment. It was the standard PFA quals, sit-ups, push-ups, and run. But I passed. I was nervous as hell for it because I wasn't sure how my knee would hold up. But it turned out to be totally fine. I didn't even have any pain afterwards. I pushed myself for this one. I made sure that I picked a target that was the same level as me, and I made sure that I beat him. This recruit made the perfect target. He almost got separated on the first PFA for not running the mile in 16 minutes, but barely scraped by on the retry. So I knew that there was no way I was letting him beat me, and I used that drive to push through, and ended up dropping my run time from 14:10 to 12:53. There were quite a few people who failed it, but luckily it's just an assessment and doesn't count against us until the final one. Passing the test put me in a chipper mood all day and night until the horseshit that day 4 had to offer. I don't remember what that... Oh, yeah, I remember what that was. Day 4 of Hell Week, the gas chamber. This was one of the more interesting days of boot camp thus far. Most of us had been told stories from senior divisions about how their experiences were, and most of them had a blast doing it. Only one person really didn't enjoy it at all. Our experience was pretty fun, to be honest. The class beforehand was a little dull, but the instructors let us ask lots of questions about what we were about to do, so it was really helpful. We lined up and chose our mask sizes and checked to see if they fit our faces properly. There were a few people that felt like they got the wrong size mask, so we all had to double check to make sure we could get a proper seal on our mask. I didn't have any issues. Then it was time to actually do it. So we lined up again, nervous and anxious at the same time, and formed like 10 rows. Each row, one at a time, had to take off their mask and form a cup shape underneath their chins as soon as they heard the words, red light only, mask up, cups up. The cup shape was to catch all of the snot and vomit that was about to come gushing out of our faces. I was somewhere in dead center, 5th row I think, so it was entertaining to watch everybody suffer before me. That was the fun part. The not so fun part was when it was my row's turn. I don't think any of us expected it to hit us so fast. I assumed it would be a gradual suck, not an instant one. So, the gas chamber, don't be too afraid of the gas chamber. You know, you'll talk to a lot of people in boot camp who will say, "Oh yeah, it was awesome, it was awesome." I mean, it was a fun experience, but it does suck. Like, I'm not gonna lie. You expect it to, you take off your mask and you expect it to hit you slowly, but it hits you like that. As soon as you inhale, you feel your lungs on fire, your eyes start watering instantly. I mean, it hits you like a freight train. It really does. The moment our mask came off, it felt like someone lit my face on fire. My eyes started watering immediately, my throat and lungs burned, and it was difficult to breathe. But I did not get the worst of it. My friend was in the same row as me, and he failed to get a proper seal on his mask. So while we were all sitting there getting a kick out of everyone else's suffering, he was standing right next to me suffering the entire time. This was without a doubt the most memorable moment in all of boot camp. My buddy was sitting, he was one of my laundry crew guys. He was actually our laundry PO. He was standing, a few people down from me. And when we were all doing the test to see if we got a perfect seal on our mask, he was one of the ones that said, "Hey, I don't think I have a perfect seal." And the instructors basically just said, "Oh no, you'll be fine. No worries, you'll be fine." So we were in the 5th row. So everybody in the row, they say, red line only, mask up, cups up. And you have to take off your mask, make the cup. And then you have to sit there and say, "Seaman recruit, blah, 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 division, blah, blah, blah," before they'll let you go. And every single person in every single row has to do that before the next row can go up. If we were in the 5th row back, he was getting gassed for, I'd say, at least 15 minutes before he finally got out of there. It was bad. It was bad. He must have been gassed for nearly 15 minutes. By the time we got to the 2nd row, I finally noticed that he was having a bad time, and so did the instructors. So they pulled him to the front and made him take his mask off and sound off, "Seaman recruit, blah, 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 Division 133, like everyone else before he could leave. By that time, his mask was half full of snot. He never wants to do that again. The effects of the gas don't last long at all, which is nice, but we weren't allowed to touch our faces for the next hour unless we wanted the effects to reactivate. Other than the chamber, I don't think anything else significant happened that day. It's all a blur at this point. So, when you go through the gas chamber, the last thing that you want to do when you get out is touch your face, because the moment you touch your face, it reactivates the gas and it'll start to burn again. So you want to avoid water. You want to avoid, when you go to take a shower later that day, it's probably going to reactivate, so just be ready for that. But it's really not that bad. So overall, I'd have to say that Hell Week was probably the funnest time that you'll have in boot camp if you decide to go. There's a lot that goes on during Hell Week, but it's the fun stuff. It's like, firefighting, marlin spike, the gas chamber, all of that stuff is combined in just a few days, and so you're constantly moving. There's always something for you to do. I know Hell Week was probably one of my favorite parts about boot camp. It sucks because you're always busy, but it kind of makes boot camp go by just that much quicker. But I think that's where we're going to leave the videos for today. Our next episode will be Asthma Week, which is another important one. That's when everybody gets kicked out of the Navy. So stay tuned for episode 7. Thank you guys for watching along, and we will see you guys next time.